Hi everybody, this is Scott Mason with a chess video for the Contra Costa Chess Club. It's been a while since I did a video and felt we need some more content up on the site, so I thought I'd pull this one out of the attic, so to speak. Um, the game I'm going to present today was a game played during a simultaneous exhibition back in 1986. And it wasn't my game. It was going on the board next to me. So the person giving the simultaneous exhibition was Zsusan Polgar, who at the time was just an international master. She's now a GM and at one time was one of the top players in the world, for women players in the world. Her opponent, Weir, was a B player, someone I went to high school with. During the simul, Zsusan actually ended up out of 26 games, won 20, drew 1, and lost 5, if I recall. But this was probably her most explosive game that she won, and I wanted to go ahead and present that here, and I think you'll find it quite entertaining. It's gets especially the ending of it. Anyway, so White, which is Zsusan, started off with d4, and Black played a pseudo Benoni type line with c5, and White pushes ahead. And then Black decided to try something interesting to throw his opponent off since this was a simul. So Black plays e5. Um, and again, in equally keeping things with wild, Polgar then went ahead and played d6, shoving the pawn down the throat. Now, play continued with knight f6, and I'll get to that in a moment, but what was determined after the game that the correct way to play would have actually been queen to b6, and then it's very difficult for White to defend the pawn there. So the pawn gets to be a little, and basically Black will be up a pawn. However, with the d pawn blocked, it's going to be very difficult for Black to develop, and White should still be okay in the long run. Alright, so let's go back. And in the game, actually, knight f6 occurred. And I'm going to just go through the opening, and we'll get to the interesting part, which is really towards the end. So this pawn in the throat is definitely a challenge for Black. So White went in and developed, and Black, realizing that the only way that they're going to get castled is to get the bishop out by fianchetto, plays g6. White promptly pins the knight, and with some nasty threats of the knight coming into b5 or to d5. And so Black defends the bishop, and the knight comes in. Fairly obvious, the only one way to defend it, play knight to a6 to defend the c7 square, which is, fork was threatened. So White continues with e4, threatening to snap off the knight and then fork on c7. So Black goes ahead and castles and gets out of the pin, or gets out of the fork, and at this point, White decided to put an all-out assault on the king. So first started with knight d7 check. Going to be very difficult to drive that knight off. The king went in the corner, and then White decided the h file is the line to open, so played h4. So the threat being, of course, h5 and prying open of the h file could get very interesting here. The pawn on d6 completely blocks Black up, and the queen side's not getting developed for Black anytime soon. Granted, White's king is also still in the center. Alright, Black continued to get the queen out to the degree it helped with check. White displays c3, and then Black decided he couldn't allow h5 to occur. So Black plays h5 in return. And again, the whole concept here of being, let's crack open the H file. White, Zsusan Polgar plays G4, which is quite a solid move. And again, it's whether the G file or the H file opens, either way, something's getting open there. So, and then Black played, knight takes G4. Now, again, remember this is a simultaneous exhibition, which is why I remember this game for so many years later. I didn't even have it written down. I actually pulled this out from memory. Bayrate, so again, Zsusan Polgar is playing a simul, walking around, making moves very quickly from board to board. She stopped for a couple of seconds here at best, and then she uncorked. Queen takes g4, which is quite an impressive move, as you'll see in a moment. So, you know, Black's options are to take it and hope to survive the onslaught, or to not take it and just be a knight down. So, not a lot of choice. Black went in and took the queen. And then one move later, after h5, Black actually resigned here. And so very short 13-move game in a simul. But let's go over some of the variations as to why Black resigned here, because this is a pretty nasty setup. First off, it's important to note here that all of Black's pieces are all pretty much on the wrong side of the board. So it doesn't help Black too much. Queen Rook, Queen Knight, Queen Bishop, and the Queen are all way over away and have no threats going on and can't really help the King. Anyway, the simplest is, the basic threat here is that if, say we're throw in any random move, the simple threat is pawn takes pawn check, bishop interposes, and bishop goes to f6 mate. So that's the basic threat you got to defend against. The going back here, the first way you can try to defend against that, which doesn't work too well, is you can play pawn takes pawn, and then after rook takes pawn, bishop's got to interpose, and instead of playing rook takes bishop check, you play bishop takes bishop. And there's simply no defense to the threat of bishop takes h8 mate, no matter what you try to do in that position. So that would be another option. So so if we can't take the pawn here, then another thing you can try to do is get the rook over one more square to try to defend that way. So we can try rook takes g8, again h takes g6 check, the bishop's got a block. Let's see, then again bishop goes to f6 check, but now we can interpose with the rook, but it doesn't help because now rook takes h6 is mate. So again, one more nice little setup there with all the pieces crashing through. Back up here a little bit. So really the only option, or the last option here that's worth attempting here, is to play bishop to h6 to block things in that respect. And if that happens, we're going to somewhat transfers. We're going to play, pawn takes pawn to open the h-file as we've been planning. The king's now going to try to run away, which is certainly not a bad plan. So king can run to g7. Now bishop takes bishop check. The king really only has one place to go without getting mated. He can't go back onto the h-file, or bishop takes f8 will be mate. So he's got to go to f6. And then white plays bishop takes f8. Now please note at this point, even though white gave up their queen, white's now actually material ahead and has a rook, a bishop, and a knight for the queen, which is far more than enough compensation. The main threat at this point is, if nothing else, we can get even more material ahead and get our queen back by just playing g7 and g8 queen. So that's one of the threats. So one way, the first way we're going to look at defending this would be to play, and probably most commonly g takes f6. But then the mate's going to follow after. Bishop comes out to c4, helping cut the king off from running to the other side of the board. So, and the basic threat here would be if we wait and don't let, or if black didn't make any move or could pass, which they can't, knight to g8 check, king to g5, and bishop h6 mate. So with that said, black can try to make a little bit of running move and delay it by one move by playing g3 to give the king a little more space to run to, but still after knight g8 check, king g5, king g5, sorry about that, knight g8 check, king g5, bishop h6 check, king g4, but now bishop b2 is made. So that didn't work out quite so well either. So that was if we played g takes f6 there in that position. So, and essentially, even though, again, logically speaking, if you don't play pawn takes pawn here, then the pawn can just queen and you're going to win either way. However, there is a mate here. So the longest line, I'm just going to show the longest line for the sake of it, is if black plays queen to a4, knight goes to g8 check, king goes to g5, and again, I'm not going to go into every little detailed variation here. I'll just say this is the longest way to delay mate for black. Knight h3 check, pawn takes knight, rook goes to g1 check, king goes to f4, bishop h6 check. Chasing the king up the board is always fun. King takes e4, and then quiet move, knight goes to g7, holding off the king for a little bit further more, keeping the king from running up to d5. So at this point, you know, this is again, I will say, the longest line, and this is by delay with some delaying tactics. So queen can sacrifice themselves, rook can take, pawn can take the pawn, but now rook g4 check, king to f3, and bishop d2 is mate, and that's the longest route here. So anyway, again, going back a ways, we'll get back to the position with the cool sacrifice. And again, from this position, I'd say again, I always remember this as being one of those amazing games just because it's simple. Queen takes g4 is such a cool move. Larry, I hope you enjoyed this game, and important to be able to develop and not do weird opening experiments. Hopefully you got that out of this too. But the queen sack was very cool, and again, it's a simultaneous where white's only taken a few seconds to move and still was able to come up with this, and it's quite solid. All right, enjoy. Have a good day.